I don't think people understand just how massive America's $41 trillion debt crisis really is. You see the headlines, maybe glance at your bank account and wonder, should I be worried? It's like hearing a strange noise at night. You hope it's nothing, but deep down, you know you can't ignore it. The US national debt is now over $41 trillion, a number so huge, it almost doesn't feel real. But this isn't just a government problem, it's your money, your savings, your future, on the line. Are the dollars in your account still going to be worth something tomorrow? We've gotten so used to hearing about the debt that it barely registers anymore, but the consequences are real for everyone. So let's break down what this number means, who we owe, and how it impacts you, without the jargon. And most importantly, let's figure out what you can actually do about it. So, what exactly is the national debt and why does it matter to you, me, and every American? In simple terms, the national debt is the total amount of money the US government has borrowed over the years to pay for things it can't afford with just tax revenue. Whenever the government spends more than it collects in taxes on things like defense, healthcare, infrastructure, or social programs, it has to borrow the difference. Imagine the country's finances like a giant credit card bill, except instead of a few $1,000s, it's a staggering $41 trillion. That's a number so big it's almost impossible to picture. To put it in perspective, if you started spending $1 million every single day, it would take you more than 112,000 years to reach 41 trillion. That's longer than human civilization has even existed. But where does all this debt actually come from? The national debt is divided into two main parts. First, there's public debt. This is money the government owes to outside investors, which includes regular people, big companies, banks, and even foreign governments who buy US Treasury bonds as a safe investment. Then there's intragovernmental debt. This is money the government owes to itself, mostly to programs like Social Security and Medicare. When these programs collect more money than they pay out, they lend the extra to the Treasury. Right now, public debt makes up about $32 trillion, while intragovernmental debt is around $9 trillion. Add them together, and you get that eye-popping $41 trillion total. So, when Social Security collects more than it needs, it loans the surplus to the Treasury. In a way, the government is borrowing from its own future obligations, like taking money from your retirement jar to pay today's bills, and leaving yourself an IOU. This might sound strange, but it's a common practice. The government promises to pay that money back later, with interest, just like any other loan. This system helps keep the government running smoothly, allowing it to fund everything from schools to highways, but it also means the debt keeps growing, year after year, as new borrowing is added on top of old. The real question is, how long can this cycle continue before it starts to impact everyday Americans? Will it lead to higher taxes, cuts in services, or even a financial crisis down the road? That's what we're here to explore in this series. We'll break down the facts, the risks, and what it all means for you. But first, let's take a closer look at who actually owns all this debt. You might be surprised. It's not just foreign countries holding America's IOUs. In fact, a huge portion is owned by American citizens, families, businesses, and even government agencies themselves. Let's dive in and see who really holds the keys to America's $41 trillion debt. When we talk about the US national debt, a big question comes up. Who actually owns all this debt? Who are the people, institutions, and countries that the United States owes money to? It's a question that's more complicated than it might seem at first glance. The answer is surprisingly broad. A little bit of everyone, both at home and abroad. The US government borrows money from a wide range of sources, and that means the list of creditors is long and diverse. Foreign countries play a significant role. Nations like Japan and China are among the largest foreign holders of US debt, collectively owning about $8 trillion worth of Treasury securities. But it's important to remember, they can't just show up and demand all their money back overnight. These investments are long-term, and they're seen as safe places to park money. But here's the twist. The single biggest creditor isn't a foreign government. It's actually us, American investors, pension funds, mutual funds, and even the Social Security Trust Fund. Everyday Americans, through their retirement accounts and savings, are some of the largest holders of US government debt. When you contribute to a 401k, buy a savings bond, or invest in a mutual fund, you're essentially lending money to the government. Your savings help fund everything from roads and schools to national defense. The Federal Reserve, America's central bank, is another major player. It holds a significant portion of the debt, buying up government bonds to help manage interest rates and keep the economy running smoothly. This is part of how the Fed tries to prevent recessions and keep inflation in check. So, when you add it all up, a huge portion of the national debt is held by Americans, for Americans, and by the government itself. It's a complex web of financial relationships that ties us all together. This mix of creditors means the US isn't at the mercy of any single lender. Instead, the risk is spread out. But it also means that, in a very real sense, we're all connected to the fate of the national debt, whether we realize it or not. The interest the government pays on its debt often ends up right back in American pockets, through retirement accounts, pensions, and government programs. But it's still money that could be used for other things, like education, healthcare, or infrastructure. The bottom line? The national debt is like a giant web that connects all of us, families, businesses, investors, and the government. It's a system that affects everyone, even if we don't see it in our daily lives. But how did we get here in the first place? To understand that, we need to rewind and look at the history behind America's debt. The national debt didn't appear overnight. It's the result of decades of spending more than we collect in taxes. Wars, recessions, and big government programs have all added to the bill. Major events like the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, the 2008 financial crisis, and the COVID-19 pandemic forced the government to borrow trillions to keep the country afloat. Tax cuts without matching spending cuts have also played a big role. Meanwhile, programs like Social Security and Medicare keep getting more expensive as the population ages. More retirees mean more benefits paid out, putting pressure on the budget. The result? A perfect storm of lower income and higher expenses, with borrowing as the go-to solution. Both political parties have contributed to this mountain of IOUs. The debt is a bipartisan legacy, and it's still growing. So, how does the government keep this massive system running? Managing $41 trillion in debt is a high-wire act. Imagine balancing on a thin wire, hundreds of feet above the ground, with the world watching your every move. That's the daily reality for Uncle Sam, as the US government juggles an ever-growing mountain of IOUs. To keep things running, the government borrows more money by issuing new bonds, essentially promises to pay back with interest. The cash raised from these bonds is used to pay off old debts coming due, and to fund everything from highways to healthcare, education to defense. It's a bit like using a new credit card to pay off an old one, while still buying groceries and paying the rent. This cycle only works as long as investors, both in the US and around the world, believe the government will always make good on its promises. That trust is the invisible glue holding the system together. But if that trust ever wavers, even a little, interest rates can shoot up fast. Suddenly, it costs much more to borrow, and the government's debt bill balloons. Higher interest means more taxpayer money goes to pay off old loans, leaving less for schools, roads, or emergency relief. To cope, the government could try to raise taxes or cut spending, but both options are political minefields. Nobody likes paying more, and few want to see their favorite programs slashed. Most federal spending goes to hugely popular programs like Social Security, Medicare, and national defense. Cutting these is a tough sell, since millions of Americans rely on them for their health, security, and retirement. That's why we see endless battles over the debt ceiling. Congress must decide how much more the government can borrow, and these debates often go down to the wire, with the world watching nervously. If the US ever defaulted, meaning it failed to pay its bills on time, the shockwaves would ripple across the globe, triggering a financial crisis that could affect jobs, savings, and economies everywhere. So far, Congress has always raised the ceiling at the last minute, narrowly avoiding disaster. But each time the stakes get higher and the risks grow. It's a dangerous game of brinkmanship. The entire system relies on trust. Trust that the US will pay its debts, trust in the dollar, trust in the future. But trust once lost is hard to regain, and it's not guaranteed forever. So what does all this mean for you and your family? The decisions made in Washington ripple out to every kitchen table, every paycheck, every savings account in America. Let's connect the dots and see how this mountain of debt and the way it's managed shapes your daily life, your opportunities, and your future. You might think the national debt is just a government problem, but it hits closer to home than you realize. When the government borrows more, it competes with everyone else for loans, pushing up interest rates on mortgages, car loans, and student debt. Businesses also face higher borrowing costs, which can slow hiring and wage growth. If the government turns to the Federal Reserve to print more money, inflation can eat away at your purchasing power. Your dollar buys less at the store, the gas pump, and everywhere else. High debt also limits the government's ability to respond to future crises, since more money goes to interest payments instead of public services. In short, the national debt is a storm cloud that can rain on everyone's parade. Let's see how this plays out for your savings. If inflation rises faster than your savings account interest, your money loses value, even if the balance goes up. This is why too much cash in the bank can be risky over time. Retirement accounts like 401ks and IRAs are also affected. Higher interest rates can lower the value of bonds, and economic uncertainty can drag down stocks. The debt acts as a headwind, making it harder for your investments to grow. If investors lose confidence in the U.S., stock prices could fall, and borrowing could get even more expensive. The bottom line, the national debt quietly chips away at your financial security, but you're not powerless. There are ways to protect yourself. Here's how. Worried about your savings? Here's what you can do. First, don't panic. The dollar isn't collapsing tomorrow. Build an emergency fund with 3 to 6 months of expenses in a high-yield savings account. This gives you a buffer against job loss or unexpected bills. Diversify your investments. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Consider international stocks and real assets like real estate or a small amount of gold. Pay down high-interest debt. Credit cards get more expensive as rates rise. The less debt you have, the more resilient you are. Stay informed and adjust your plan as the economy changes. You can't control the national debt, but you can control your own financial health. That's your best defense. So, is your money safe? For now, yes. Your savings won't vanish overnight. The US dollar and financial system are still the backbone of the global economy, but the real risk is slow. Inflation and higher interest rates can erode your money's value over time. The debt is a long-term problem, not an immediate disaster. Eventually, tough choices, higher taxes, spending cuts, or more inflation will be needed. The longer we wait, the harder those choices get. Stay informed, demand responsibility from leaders, and focus on your own finances. Build an emergency fund, diversify, pay down debt, and live within your means. Your money is safe today, but its future value depends on the actions you take now. Face the numbers, make a plan, and you'll be ready for whatever comes next. If you found this helpful, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more clear, no-nonsense breakdowns on money and the economy. Thanks for watching.